the Finance Doctor. So get your questions, get your understanding, because this is a talk with the Finance Doctor. The gentleman that I am bringing before you, he has a PhD in finance and economics, over 25 years of experience. So he has 100% of the information. He is helping a lot of people, and he is definitely here to answer whatever questions that you all have this evening. So with that being said, I want to turn this call over to our business partner, Dr. Craig Bythewood. Dr. Bythewood, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. How are you doing? How is everyone doing? Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure for me to greet this group. I hope everyone had a good Monday and Tuesday. And let's jump right in to our session, a talk with the Finance Doctor, your RX for FOREX, a prescription for economic healing, a prescription for financial health and wellness. So as always, this particular conversation has much more value if you and I are aggressive about understanding and respecting the power of the unmuted microphone. So I would encourage you to ask some additional questions, as good as some of the questions I heard over the past hour during our tools training call. I would like to reiterate that there were some very good questions, and I'd also like to state what was stated already, which is that it's so critically important that we let these conversations we're having on Tuesday and Thursday be the frosting on the cake of information that we get from the Academy. You guys are doing that. All I'm doing is just reinforcing that we need to continue to do that. It helps us to get stronger with the fundamentals, with the infrastructure that all of these conversations are built on. We'll feel comfortable with pips, and we'll feel comfortable with lots, and we'll feel comfortable with leverage, and we'll feel comfortable with support and resistance. All of these terms that we're using that basically have a meaning behind the meaning, and the more we layer our understanding of it, the better we can be in, as Ms. Dyer always says, making sure that we are in a position of profit. And it's so important to me that we're in a position of profit with all that we do, that we are in a position of profit financially, but also in every area of our lives, which is one of the reasons why I'm always talking about mindset and always talking about the way in which we think and the way in which we navigate ourselves so that we can be in the best position. So we can be in the best position to profit in all areas of our life. So with that in mind, this foreign exchange slice is but a fraction of the economic pie. We want to make sure that we understand all components of it. So, as always, I pause first to make sure that any immediate household value, financial or economic questions that you can ask will be our first measure of the day. So are there any questions, comments, or testimonies? One of the things that I think we should always remind ourselves of is that this conversation is under the moniker of BYOB, Be Your Own Bank. And the Be Your Own Bank concept was coined by our own coach and mentor, Mr. Gerald Rogers. And I'm particularly pleased with that concept because it literally speaks to what I have been doing my professional life. When I earned my PhD at the University of Florida in finance and economics, as anyone who gets a doctorate, I had to pick a research area. And the research area that I selected was mergers and acquisitions. Well, as I got closer to the finish line and closer to the part where I had to begin to write my dissertation, I decided to be a little more qualitative in my mechanism of selecting a subject. What I decided to do was to put myself in the best position to succeed, to finish with a smooth and easy process with my PhD by selecting as a chairperson the person that I felt would give me the fairest shake, the individual whose personality aligned most with mine, because I'm a firm believer that we need to be efficient in addition to being effective. What's the difference? Effective means we're doing the right thing, getting a PhD, joining IML, deciding to trade in a $5.3 trillion industry. Those are effective decisions. Efficient means doing things right. How are you going to trade? Are you going to pay attention to all of the concepts in the IML Academy first? Are you going to use our training tools, our tools training call, and our talk with the finance doctor to accentuate it? So as a PhD student, I felt the efficient thing to do was to select a major or a dissertation focus based on aligning myself with the individual that will make my process as smooth and easy as possible. So the individual that I selected was a gentleman named Dr. Mark Flannery, who was my chairperson. And guess what his area of interest was and still is to this day? Banks. He studied banks. So I took my field of mergers and acquisitions and tailored it to bank mergers and acquisitions. So that means I've been studying banks since circa 1991, 1992. That is a long time for me to professionally be in a position to follow an industry which literally 25 years later will put me in a position where when a great mind like Gerald D. Rogers comes up with the concept of be your own bank, it aligns with everything I've done for almost the past 3 decades. So I'm saying all that to say this. We are here in the right place, at the right time, with the right mindset, and we just need to take advantage of what's happening with us spiritually. And the moment that I begin to tell this story, we get a chat from Tranisha saying that she just made money on a currency pair. And that's what it's all about. That's why we're here. We're here because we understand that these conversations are literally impacting households. So Tranisha might be the 165th, but there will be a time when we're talking about the millionth. We are literally in this Be Your Own Bank movement going to touch 1 million families, and we just saw how it works. We just saw that someone who sat in a training call to accentuate what they've been learning in the IML Academy just made profit. Just made profit while we are on this call. That's a beautiful thing. And that's why we're here. And it gives me so much pride and pleasure that we're watching what we're doing in real time. And whether you realize, whether you caught it like I did, but the little hairs on my forearms went up because the text, the chat had so much energy associated with it. She literally was so excited about it. Are we sharing her screen? How cool is that? So we're looking at her screen. Let's pause and take a look at that. If I can borrow a phrase from one of my 3 teenage daughters, that's what's up. Love it. Thank you very much, Miss, and am I saying your name right? Miss Tranisha, for sharing this with us. Thank you so much for being excited about it. Thank you so much for allowing us to have a tangible representation of the manifesting that we're doing with this movement. It's exciting. There's nothing I can say right now that's any better than us literally watching ourselves doing what we're doing through this collective consciousness. I talk about it all the time. When you know, the Bible says where 2 or more shall gather. Quantum physicists say that when individuals get together, that there's a unity of thought. The collective consciousness simply means that when you get individuals with a similar intention, with similar thought, the vibrations begin to synergize. What does synergy mean? 2 + 2 = 5. So together we can accomplish more than the sum of what we could do individually. Together we can accomplish more than what we'd be able to do when we sum up the individual. So look at these squares. Each one of these squares has the potential to accomplish a certain goal, a certain outcome, a certain level of results. If we add up each one of those squares individually in terms of what they can do, that value, that number, that measurement that we would come up with would be less than what we could do if all of the squares moved together. And I don't have to convince you of that because we're watching it. We're seeing it happen. If Tranisha was by herself and she made profit, the impact of her making profit would be so much smaller. Literally, the buzz that she felt, the vibration and energy that she felt hit every one of us. And now each one of these, I'm calling them squares, but they're really rectangles. Each one of these rectangles will walk away from this call and be in a higher state, in a higher vibration than we would have been without it. So I ask for questions every time we have a talk with the finance doctor. But we need to recognize that what just happened is bigger and stronger than any question you could have asked and any answer I could have provided. We literally allowed ourselves to walk in a collective consciousness. And I just wanted to stop and make mention of that and thank Tranisha one more time. So I feel like I'm hearing some microphones. So are there some questions out there that someone has? Questions, comments, testimonies. Questions, comments, testimonies. Questions, comments, testimonies. Well, one of the things that I started to talk about earlier was the fact that...
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
question. Alfred Buckley, what can I do for you, sir?
Yes, sir. One of the things that I'd like to make comment on is that it's been a roller coaster for me. But it's a very good roller coaster that I'm on because I see myself changing every day in terms of the language I'm using,
Right.
the different processes and different strategies that I'm conceptualizing. And so one of the things that I'm challenged on every day now is, I want to say, reorganizing or organizing myself in such a way that I understand the basics. So as I go from the basics, I can understand the complex, because the complex are always going to be there. But if you understand the basics and where you came from, and that's one of the things that Ms. Dyer has been teaching me, is if you understand the basics, then then you start dealing with the complex, that'll be easier for you to understand where you want to go, how you need to go, and to be able to know the different strategies that you want to use. That's one of the things that I'm learning. And when I started out, it's so huge and humongous. Now it's easier to encapsulated in myself, but now I have to reorganize myself so that I understand where I need to go and how my strategy should be as I go down the pike.
Mr. Buckley, I certainly and sincerely thank you for that. There is an African proverb that says, how does an ant eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What an honest testimony, Alfred Buckley, because you admitted that there were times when you looked at it elephantitically. Oh my God, look at this big elephant I've got to eat. But you slowed yourself down. You put yourself in a position where you recognize just how valuable this could be. You focused on the results. You focused on the end. That's exactly what you said. And then you were able to just relax and put yourself in a position to be able to do what I say all the time. Watch the next video. That's literally all you have to do. I taught a class this morning, and this is an entrepreneurship class, and we're writing a business plan, teaching these young people to write business plans. And it's really powerful because they all have actual businesses. So these business plans we're writing will be real, and they will be able to utilize them. So I gave them an assignment to go to the library and research different things in the demographic area and the industry, competitors, just situations around their particular industry or product. So they would have a feel for what they were dealing with and they could put that information in their business plan. So one of the gentlemen said, well, the problem is, and I stopped them. I said, there's no problem. There's only a question that you're going to ask and an answer I'm going to give you. Oh, yeah, Dr. B, you're right. So the problem is, what did you say? Oh, yeah, that's right. So I don't know what to look up. I said, okay, let me ask you this. How many things have you looked up so far? None. But I just don't know what to put into Google. What do I search for? So tell me again, how many things have you searched for? Well, none. And we went round and round, at least 6 or 7 rounds. I did it on purpose because I wanted to show the class this concept. He had yet to do a single Google search, but yet the pressure of not knowing what Google search to do made him do how many Google searches? 0. And I had to let the class know this is not about Javier. This is about humans. We oftentimes put ourselves in a position where because we don't, like Alfred Buckley said, allow ourselves to take a deep breath and understand the infrastructure, we do nothing. We do nothing because we're not sure what to do. We do nothing because we're overwhelmed. When literally, instead of looking at it as an elephant, just take one bite. Just take one bite. And the moment I literally made him take his phone out and do a Google search. But what do I do the Google search on? You tell me. And he kept going back and forth. You know, the last thing I said to him, I said, okay, I've got the grade book right here. So unless you come up with an idea of what to Google first, I'm going to mark in the grade book and bring your grade on this down, this participation grade from an A to a C. Now suddenly he was motivated and he came up with a Google search. He did it. It happened to be a good Google search, but even if it wasn't, that Google search will lead him to the next Google search, which will lead him to the next Google search. And when we met back an hour later, his research was impeccable. The stuff that he shared was innovative and it was helpful to the class, and some of his ideas were used by his peers. Think about that. Think about how many times we put ourselves in a position where we don't Alfred Buckleyize our situation and we stop and do nothing because we're not sure what to do. When in reality, it's impossible to do it wrong. Did you hear his first statement? He said, I have been on a roller coaster. And I was ready to pounce on that statement and say, well, what's wrong with a roller coaster? But he beat me to it. He was like, but it's a good roller coaster. My 8th grader asked me 2 weeks ago if she could go to Busch Gardens. Dad, you don't even have to give me any money because I have a pass. I wouldn't mind. I would have given her the money, but Dad, you don't even have to give me the money. I have a season pass. I'm going to go to Busch Gardens. Honey, why do you like going to Busch Gardens so much? Because of the rides. There's a thrill associated with going up and going down and doing all these different gyrations, and I enjoy it. So Alfred Buckley, I thank you again because you're recognizing, A, it's a roller coaster. B, it's fun. I just purchased my season pass to the foreign exchange gardens, and I'm literally riding this ride, but it's fun. And I recognize that I have to understand the infrastructure. I hope y'all think this is as funny as I do. Have you all seen those commercials? I know you're muted, but have you seen those commercials where they say, okay is not good enough, and the mom and the son are riding on a roller coaster, and they say, is this ride safe? Well, I hope so. I did an okay job of it. And then the little boy is like, well, what happens if something goes wrong? And the guy says, we'll just move to the next town. So literally, they get off the ride because they don't feel that it's safe enough to be on that ride. But this ride is so safe. It's safe because we have an IML Academy that provides us with the educational infrastructure, thank you, Alfred Buckley, to be able to understand how it works, cross our T's, dot our I's. All you have to do is watch one video. But there's so many videos and so many different ways, and how do I know this, and so many strategies. I hear you. Watch one. Try one. Do one trade. Because when you look at it like that, literally you keep yourself from doing what Javier did. Javier literally went 8 rounds of doing no Google searches because he didn't know which Google search to do. But we understand that the way to get to the best Google search is to go to the first one and then go to the second one. And again, he was the model for the class. His thoughts, his ideas were better than anybody else. But he had to take himself through that progression first. And in my comment earlier about effective versus efficient, effective, trade and foreign exchange. Efficient, do it in a relaxed, comfortable, smooth, and easy way with great educators like Tasha M. Dyer giving us the specifics, telling us the steps, explaining it to us, giving it to us in a very user-friendly way, giving us the repetition to understand how the rules work and what to do, showing it to us visually. These are the type of situations that allow us to recognize that it's a good roller coaster that we're on. And the only reason why it's a roller coaster is because it allows us to go up and allows us to go down. One of you, D, I believe, asked a really good question about buying and selling. Bythewoodism. If you know what you're doing, you will always have a job. If you know why you are doing it, you will always be the boss. I really liked her question because her question showed me that she really wants to understand the why. She says, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that if the PIP is going up, then that means it's a buy. Correct. And you're saying that if the PIP goes down, then that's a sell. Correct. It's those type of questions that fit into the Buckley principle. Let me understand the basics first. Because if I understand the basics, if I understand the simplistic infrastructure that's backing up what's going on, then as I add different layers of complexity, it will become easier for me. Let's be honest about something. We're trained sometime in certain educational settings to take on the complex first. I'll give you an example snatched from the headlines of my life. I'm going to gossip about my 9th grader. So there's a girl on my 9th grade basketball team that I coach, and she's just super sharp. When we want someone to call a play, we have her do it. We say, Jaylee, you just do whatever play you want. Her basketball IQ is incredible. So I guess my daughter felt some type of way about me continuing to talk about how smart she is. She's such a smart basketball player. And so I made the comment driving home, man, Jaylee is so smart. And my ninth grader said to me as she rolled her eyes and her neck simultaneously, well, if she's so smart, why is she just in Algebra 1? So to my daughter, intelligence was based on the level of complexity that she's been able to reach. So since my daughter is in a math class that's 2 levels higher, she felt like she wasn't smart. But I understand that there are different levels of smartivity. As a professor, as a father, as a mentor, as a coach, I understand that her ability to be able to process the way plays work in a basketball environment is brilliant. So I don't care what kind of math she's taking, she's still brilliant. But in that moment, my daughter, in that moment of hateration, she was identifying intelligence with a level of complexity. But I believe in the Buckley principle. I believe in Bucklerizing it. Yes, I love to make up words. When you Bucklerize it, you realize that it is about the simplistic first. You start with the simplistic and you get it. You understand it, and then you build layers on it. That is the way in which you make efficient decisions rather than just effective. We've already made the effective decision. We decided to become business partners in IML. We decided to be a guest on this call and expose ourselves to some good information because somebody loved us. We've already made the effective decision. Now we're working on the efficient. It's efficient to go to the IML Academy and get it, to watch the next video. It's efficient to come to a tools training call and get it and have another layer of it and ask great questions. It's efficient to listen to a talk with the finance doctor and participate and recognize the power of the unmuted microphone and ask questions about various levels of personal finance. So as we continue to be more and more in profit, as we continue to Triniciaize our trades, we allow ourselves to understand how to manage the money. I tell the CeCe Ramsey story all the time in classes and speeches. I'm always talking about the situation where she started to do well in her banking and the bank said, hey, we want to offer you this bank product. And because she's living right and because our collective consciousness is literally putting ourselves in the best place at the right time for the right reason, we happen to have been talking about CDs that week. And let's recall why we were talking about that particular bank product that week. Because someone unmuted their microphone and asked a question. And if we're going to tell this story, let's tell the entire story. The person who asked the question didn't even get the answer. They asked the question, it was late. I said I would answer it the next session because it was complex and I wanted to make sure we had enough time. That person didn't even show. But because they felt comfortable, and let's keep it real, sometimes the more we participate in these calls, the less we unmute our mic. I get more unmuted mics from people who are first time, second time, third time, because you're fresh and new. And then we get a little bit complacent when we come to these calls on a regular basis. And we're not as aggressive when unmuting our microphone. When in reality, those of us that are veterans of these calls, we're the ones that should be asking the questions because we understand what we need to know. We've been in the game longer and we get the fact that there's so many parts of our economic pie that we can benefit from by asking questions, especially when you recognize a truth. I started teaching 3 years before I graduated with my PhD, which means I've been teaching for 28 years. And in teaching 28 years, I've noticed a very interesting, common, accurate phenomenon. And that is, when someone asks a question, It is always in the minds of everybody else. There are always multiple people in the room who had the same question, but the spokesperson is the one who asked it. And I always think about this, because it's always true that whenever someone asks a question, someone will say, oh, I was going to ask that. Or I may ask later, or they may tell me later, or somebody will email me and say I had that same question. Because I know it always happens, because that's the way the collective consciousness works. That's the way the vibration works. That's why we all got so excited when we saw that prophet, the excitement of the prophet chat. Because I know it works like that, I always ask this question. Those times when we have sessions like this, or other sessions at conferences or jobs or classrooms, and people don't ask the question, think about how much applied knowledge is lost. How much applied knowledge never happened because the person did not ask the question. So I want you to, right now, at 10:27 Eastern on Tuesday, May 7th, I want you, especially old heads, to really think about this concept that I say or again. And that is about this economic pie. Think about the slices in the economic pie. Think about insurance. Think about banking. Think about credit cards. Think about mortgages. Think about real estate. Think about retirement plans. Think about estate planning. Think about all of the components that make up our financial world. And think about what I say every talk with the finance doctor, which is that this is the only area of our society where the people who give us the information about those topics are the very people who sell us the products. Ask yourself, are you an expert in every single one of those areas? If a family member had to address one of those issues, if someone passed away suddenly and you had to manage those issues for a loved one, would you know what to do? Would you understand all of the components? I should have said added taxes to that list. If the answer is no, think about the fact that you have access to a business partner who knows about this due to his exposure, due to his ability to have been a financial planner for a number of decades, and is not affiliated with a product and loves you, wants to help you, wants your family to be better. What level of efficiency is that we can take advantage of this opportunity and ask questions in those economic slices? So what I'm asking you to do right now, there was a time earlier in this call when someone was asking a question. Don't recall the question, but I recall it was a female, and I recall thinking to myself, that's a really good question. And then as the person was getting the answer, there was a small child that spoke in the background. And I began to think about the fact that the answer to that question has an opportunity to speak to the voice of that child. That child represents another generation of individuals who will hear this dialogue and understand this vibration and be able to operate in markets with much more comfort than we may have based on what we heard when we were that age. So we're literally blessing the life of a child who will have a spouse, who will have children, who will be able to vibrate in an abundance mindset based on her good question, based on that child being in the background of that. So all I'm saying to you is this: every time you unmute your microphone, you have the ability to touch a child, to touch a future household, to touch another life. So those of you right now that are sitting behind those rectangles that have microphones with diagonal red lines on it, Thursday, come to the table having done some reflecting about those slices. And think about areas in those slices where you could increase your knowledge so that you can benefit a child. You can benefit a life. You can benefit a household. You can benefit a new generation. My daughter is a senior and will be graduating on May 30th. That's a Thursday. So I wonder when I come to this call if my eyes will be red. I'm just joking because I actually have to get on a plane that night. But that's not the point. The point is she called me at 10:10 p.m. And my immediate response was to send her this flyer because they're supposed to know. That flyer says a talk with the finance doctor, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 p.m. And the moment I sent that flyer, she responded with OMG, exclamation, 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 exclamation. I'm so sorry, I forgot. So these babies know that you don't holler at daddy for those 30 minutes when I'm pouring into the lives of others, when I'm being poured into based on the chat that we got from Tanisha. So I just want you to recognize how serious this is. My child is not allowed to talk to me. That child got a message of abundance. So literally, we are here for a purpose, for an intentional purpose, and I want us to take advantage of it. So I'm excited. I'm going to iron my blazer right now for Thursday, because Thursday, we're going to unmute those microphones, and we're going to go get it. I now turn this call over to our host and our hostesses. Thank you very much for your patience and understanding in tonight's A Talk with the Finance Doctor.
Wow. I'm excited. From this call to someone being able to take profit from the training call during this call. So to know that you're actively trading while we're training is phenomenal. To know that this information is being received like that is phenomenal, because it's about financially educating families. It's about financially educating individuals, something we've not had in the past before. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the BYOB challenge. I'm excited about the BYOB movement. I'm excited about you learning how to think like a bank, operate like a bank, and be your own bank. So that is what this is about. So 18 May, Jacksonville, Florida, Trade Expo. This is definitely where you want to be. The 20th of July, make sure you are pre-registered. Make sure you're pre-registered, because we have our leadership. We have our leadership conference. I just dropped the link in the group. Make sure you're pre-registered for that, because that's the 20th of July. 1 million families starts with you. You have to be able to help yourself and able to help others. So 1 million families begins with you. Also, don't forget, we are doing our mental fast. Mental fast. Clear your mind. What are you pouring into yourself? You're on this call because you made a decision to accept the challenge to be your own bank. You've made that decision. So what do you pour into you? We want to pour knowledge. Mental fast. Clearing everything else. Clear the clutter. Just like we cleared the clutter from the candles, clear the clutter. Mentally fast. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, next Tuesday, 7:30, 1 million families VIP call. 1 million families VIP call. We will begin it at 7:30 on next Tuesday. The BYOB 1 million families VIP call. So on Thursday, we have our BYOB tools training at 9 p.m. We also have a talk with the finance doctor. A talk with the finance doctor. And you heard Dr. Bythewood. Bring your questions. It's important to understand what you're doing and then why you're doing it. Bring your questions. I'm excited for what Thursday is going to bring. So invite to this call because this is what it's all about. So ladies and gentlemen, you all have a wonderful, wonderful and blessed evening. And this will officially